So today we're going to be talking about how do we do, we call it groups through telehealth, but really what we're talking about is, things we're going to try to call things like clubs, seminars, workshops, and we're going to talk about but not calling it group anymore, right? So we're going to try to leave the title of group therapy, and we'll talk about why that might be valuable or might be a good idea as we go forward. My name is Dr. Aaron Brinen. I'm an assistant professor at Drexel's College of Medicine in the Department of Psychiatry. I've been really fortunate to partner with the Peak at the University of Pennsylvania, led by Christian Kohler and Monica Kalkin. So the purpose of today, I couldn't come up with a not purpose answer for today. So the purpose of today is really to conceptualize groups and clubs as an intervention and exactly what are we doing, and then identifying the specific lessons that individuals will be able to learn through them. And so that's going to be where we're going to be focusing today. Okay. So why group, right? We're going to talk about this, and why not group? That was my little cute thing as I pulled out my copy of Yalom's The Theory and Practice of Group Therapy. So group approaches to treatment, it allows us, group is really unique. I've been doing groups and I developed the CTR group for years, decades now, I guess. I've been doing group therapy. So I've been a big believer in group all the way from the beginning of my training. In fact, every practicum site that I went to, I ran some form of group. Even if groups didn't exist, I would say, can I try pulling one together? And they'd say, good luck. And then I'd always end up having a group somewhere along the way. But when we're thinking about groups, particularly for the individuals that we serve, we're going to think about this idea of group therapy as a method of capitalizing on the motivation that individuals have. It really gives a wonderful opportunity for individuals to learn lessons, right? Particularly about socializing, capitalizing on, about motivation, about energy. A lot of the lessons that we want to do, and if you think about all of the tap dancing that you do when you're doing CTR, a lot of that takes care of itself in group therapy. I'm an individual practitioner. I have a private practice where I see individuals with schizophrenia spectrum diagnoses, and it's a lot of work, right? When I have an individual that I'm trying to activate, it's a lot of work. And if the first thing doesn't work and the second thing doesn't work, I'm tap dancing and tap dancing and tap dancing over and over and over again. And it can be tiring. All of that stuff takes care of itself when we're talking about group therapy. You get a bunch of people all together, and they can't help but feed off of each other. And also, if I engage one person and it doesn't work, the other person might react to it. And so when you sort of have multiple opportunities of sort of striking while it's hot. The other thing that happens is these are all principles. If nobody's ever read Yalom's Theory and Practice of Group Therapy, he talks about that there's these basic principles of group therapy. Some of them aren't as useful to me, but some of them really are. And this idea of feeling this togetherness, the sense of feeling a connection, learning and being able to teach, all of these are opportunities for creating an experience with a person that they can learn from. And so there really is a value of group therapy. Additionally, as we're trying to identify aspirations and make those aspirations really vivid, right? These are like all of the core pieces of CTR. As we're trying to do that, there's sort of like a group think approach, or like there's a concept in social psychology called risky shift, where when you're in a group of people, you're more likely to make a more extreme decision. That principle still can apply here, but almost in a positive way. So for example, if I'm trying to elicit aspirations, if I ask, let's say Anita, and Anita says, I don't know, or nothing. If next I sort of switch over and I go, well, Michelle, what would you want to be doing? What would you want to get? And she says, I want to get an apartment. There's this sort of, risky shift feel where all of a sudden Anita goes, wait a second, if Michelle can get an apartment, I can get an apartment, right? If Michelle can go back to school, I can go back to school. Michelle couldn't even remember, how to share her camera. I'm going to go back to school too. And it's sort of almost like, it's somewhere between risky shift and sibling rivalry, but it all ends up just motivating us more. And then we're both talking about what our apartment's going to look like if we go off to college. And so in that, we start capitalizing on the motivation. Also, as individuals have successes, we can learn from each other, and that's a wonderful opportunity. It isn't me, the practitioner, who's teaching people. It's ultimately we can learn from each other. The successes one person has, another person might try it as well. Sometimes I've thought about that. Sometimes almost like how we have like a recipe swap. Sometimes that might be some of the things that might happen. So why not group? Right? And group is in quotes, right? It's because the individuals that we serve have been grouped to death. They don't want to go to another group. They're tired of it. They're always told to go to group. And group has this connotation of illness, right? And so we're going to talk about ways to think about this procedure of group in a way that's a little bit more dynamic, that's going to engage any of the individuals that we talk about. So this isn't just for the young folks, but this is for all of the folks that we're going to serve. But really, this idea of we're going to engage the individual versus thinking of it as sort of engaging the patient mode. So the strategy that we're going after, right? So before we think about what we're going to do, we need to really ask ourselves, why are we going to do it? Right? What's the sort of commander's intent here that we're trying to accomplish? So the goal of treatment, if we think about what does treatment look like, it's increasing engagement in this ideas in activities that are productive, meaningful to individuals that we serve. That is the sort of the big picture goal of treatment. So then if we're thinking about how does group therapy play into that, it's really this idea about increasing motivation and increasing connection, right? Which are the opposites of the negative symptoms of schizophrenia, right? If people are more motivated and people are more connected, that's kind of, we're activating an incompatible set of experiences. Also, the strategy of group is going to be to help reduce the obstructions to activity. So anything that's an obstacle to people being more active and doing more things, we can tackle those things as a part of group. But when we tackle obstacles in the context of moving toward the things that we want in our life, one, we're more likely to apply that in our lives. Two, we're more likely to be open to considering new ways of being and considering the things that we want to solve, right? So what we're talking about here really is continuing to focus our attention on the negative symptoms, right? Problems with motivation and problems with connection. The reason is as we increase activity, whether it's from an individual standpoint or from a group standpoint, we're going to really start to reduce the time for distressing voices, worry and persecution, increased stress, and ultimately gathering more data. And in a group format, we can actually gather that data and think through that data together. So we're going to think about these things in a couple different ways. So there's the first thing that we're going to think about, and this should be the mainstay of every program that we're working in. We're talking about clubs, right? So clubs are going to be a way of testing out those negative symptoms, right? We're testing out the beliefs that are associated with negative symptoms. So everybody wants to belong to a club. We all belong, many people on this phone call belong to some form of a club, or, whether it's a walking club, whether it's a cooking club, people want to belong to clubs. Clubs are something that are normal. The only two groups I've ever really seen are there's study groups, right? So those exist. And then, yeah, I think it's really study groups, right? But it's just sort of the nature of it. Ultimately, when we're talking about clubs, these are things that sometimes get relegated to the idea of recreation, that we're just doing rec therapy. And really what we're doing when we engage an individual in these activities that are traditionally thought of as recreational therapy, it can act as a behavioral experiment for the beliefs that I can't do it until I get the energy, or if I make a little mistake, it's as bad as a complete catastrophe. Time with other people is not worth the energy, and it's not going to be enjoyable, so I might as well not do it. So we're going to test out those beliefs around success, around enjoyment, around ability to have energy, things like that. And that's where the clubs are going to do. So some classic things you can think about: music, art, games, right? Even online games, walking clubs, you can do that. Cooking clubs. There's a group, where are they? Oh, I think it's Peace in Philadelphia, who has a cipher, or they used to have a cipher club, which was they'd get all the people together and they'd freestyle rap. So there's all of these different clubs that you can do. The more creative you get, the better, right? But if you think about it, a lot of times when they have art group is ultimately doing art together. So why are we calling it an art group when it's really an art club, right? And it might have multiple different types of art clubs. But through that, as I start working on these things, I can start testing out the ideas about whether, whether I can be successful or whether I can't. I remember from 4th grade, Mrs. Snyder. Wow, I can't believe I remember her name though. Mrs. Snyder used to say that there are always happy accidents, right? And so if you make a mistake, it's a happy accident. I think Bob Ross said that. And now that I think about it, Miss Snyder probably stole that from Bob Ross. But right, so there's all of these little things that we learn from doing art together, right? Or ultimately we can do something together and be successful. Again, sharing music even, those are things that we can do together. Then that brings us to things like seminars, right? Seminars are an opportunity to get skills in a quick way. Seminars are a little bit like these webinars. I mean, and I guess while we're in this digital age right now, we might call them webinars, right? That you can log into. Those are usually these sort of like, they're skills, but they're sort of like a one-off, right? So, it's a skill that you might learn in 1 or 2 opportunities. You might have them report back on how it goes, but it's just a really nice thing. But just like I'm gathering, some people were interested in group therapy. So, we showed up and people went, oh, okay, I want to learn about this thing, right? And so then all of a sudden you kind of tune in, you get some information, you go try it out, maybe you report back on how it goes, and that's going to be a nice discrete skill. So, so things like a mindfulness skill, right? A visualization or deep breathing, some sort of stress reduction skill. Maybe even learning like one assertiveness skill, right? So like, for example, there's a great technique called the broken record technique, where when somebody's being really aggressive with you, you just repeat the same thing over and over and over again. You repeat it 3 times and then you stop it. We can turn that, we can learn that skill in 1 meeting or 2 meetings. So it's like all of us go to a seminar. But think about it. All of us go to webinars. All of us go to seminars. So it's a very normal experience. It's not going to group to learn because you're broken. It's a seminar. Low commitment. And ultimately, we can identify the ones that will be interesting to people because it helps them get better, move toward what they want. So for example, do you think it would be easier or harder to be in class with that difficult person if we learned how to deal with them when they get really aggressive? Oh, easier? Oh, cool. Well, my friend Crystal, she's doing a webinar, I think next week. If you want to tune in, let me get you the information. It's this how to not get flummoxed by this annoying girl in your class webinar, right? We're not doing anger management. We want to describe it functionally about the way of what you're going to learn. And so these are seminars. They're great, 1, 2 session, and then you're done. Then there's these ideas of workshops. Workshops might be a little bit more intense. They're good for sort of extended topics. Let's say we do a couple of these assertiveness ones and people go, I want to learn more about that because and one person's going, well, because that's going to help me at my job. And another person's going to say, well, that'll help me out when I want to go to school. And then another person says, well, that's going to help me with like my mom because sometimes I get really frustrated with it. And so now we've got us all wanting to learn more so we can be a little bit more effective. So these extended topics are what we're thinking about when we think about workshops. We're going to still set it for a discrete period of time, right? So let's say we're going to do a three session series on how to get, on how to get better sleep, or a 3 series on how not to get, how to keep your cool when everybody around you is losing theirs, right? So things like sleep, things like worry, that's a great one. Worry, any of these can be a seminar or a workshop, but saying, would it be easier to not worry? Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So let's tame worry, right? So we have a three session series on worry. Even things like interview skills, right? How do you get your first job, or how do you get your next job? But these are all nice, discrete workshops that people can go to. And again, I'll say, how many people on this call go to a workshop? And some of us go to seminars and workshops for us personally. Some of us go to seminars and workshops professionally, some a little from column A and a little from column B. So these are all things that are part of being in the normal world. We're teaching them how to go out and be in this world and do the things that many other people do. Oh yeah, dealing with annoying people. That's called anger management. The other piece that I got to come back to over and over again is we need to be much better at marketing what we're doing. One of the things that I frequently see is people give horrible names to these groups, right? So anger management, nutrition for schizophrenia, negative symptoms group, voices and delusions group. Who wants to show up to a voices and delusions group? Who would want to show up to the, how to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend and keep a girlfriend or boyfriend? Everybody's showing up to that. The dating group, everybody's showing up to. The voices and paranoia group, nobody's showing up to. Ironically, they could actually be the very same topics that you're covering in each of them. So again, we want to make sure that we're marketing the function of the group, not marketing the name of the group. So anger management, nobody wants to go to. How to not get annoyed and keep your job, everybody goes to. I know I'm being hyperbolic, that everybody and nobody. It's a little bit more targeted. It's a little bit more of a commitment, but it's for this targeted purpose. So we want to help the individuals that we serve think about it in the context of where they want to be going. So that brings us to this point of how do we start developing this type of programming? I think the first part is, let's start with what we're doing already, right? So when you think about your team, if you're an independent practitioner, like, what do you already know? What are the things that you're really good at? So like when I'm thinking about a wellness practice that I want to teach, I'm probably not going in and teaching like very, very deep mindfulness, because that would involve, I'd be working before that. If there's a wellness practice that I'm going to start with, I usually start with deep breathing, visualization, obviously cognitive restructuring. Why? Because they're things that I already know. Also, it's good to sort of expand the things that you know. That's always a good thing as well. The next part of it is build your club program. And the reason is this, is if we start with the ice cream, and once all of the individuals we're serving are eating their ice cream, then they're allowed to eat some broccoli, right? So remember, the focus of CTR and the focus of really many therapies is about building up activity and building up engaging in activity. And that is done through your club program. Afterwards, as obstacles get in the way of where somebody wants to be in their life, that's when we're going to start thinking about seminars and workshops. So as I try to go out and apply for a job, right, or as I try to apply online for school, if I'm hearing my voices or worrying that the FBI is after me, it's in the context of where I want to be going that we're going to work on worry. Whereas if we just go hunting for all of the problems, it's not in any context. So the skill is less likely to be held onto. The other thing is, as people are doing individual therapy and your teams are talking, think about it going, okay, how many individuals do we have right now that are struggling with sleep? Okay, so if they're struggling with sleep, let's get everybody on, let's offer a sleep seminar coming up. How many of the individuals that we're serving are worrying? Okay, let's do a, I don't know, Elsa from Frozen, Let It Go, right? And then we do a worry one. How many people are having trouble with the person that they live with? Okay, let's deal with a, communication one. So that way, how to not get frustrated by the people who are frustrating. And then get the ideas from the individuals, right? So as we're doing stuff, clubs, when people are energized, it's great to go, this is fun, what else do you want to do? And then develop more clubs. Also, as we're doing things and getting people moving forward, saying, is there anything you've ever wanted to learn? A lot of times the individuals go, well, I always get really nervous when I go around people, so I want to figure out how to speak better. Okay, so now all of a sudden we got a seminar or a workshop. Many times the individuals will tell us. The first lesson we want individuals to pull is that coming to clubs is great. So we want to really engage people in activity, engage them in fun. Even the action plans that come off of your groups and clubs should really revolve around something that's going to be enjoyable, something that's fun. Because one, you're testing the beliefs that go along with the negative symptoms. So you still are treating a symptom. Okay, so people are like, how would I document that? The way you document it is you're actually doing what's called a behavioral experiment. You're testing the belief out through activity, right? Learning through doing. And then they start learning, oh man, Wednesday is the best day to tune in, right? Wednesday, I jump on Doxy. So that way I can go see Gavin and we can figure out what's going on. So the first thing we really want to do is make sure that the individuals we serve get the idea of, oh man, going there, that's just a blast. It's like the highlight of my week. We don't need it to be, this is where I'm going to go and learn these important things, right? Because ultimately, it's going to become more of a chore. And a lot of people are not really interested in more chores. Oop. Hold on. Okay. So that's sort of the core of where we're going to go when we're thinking about what we're trying to accomplish. So how do we translate that over to telehealth, clubs, seminars, and workshops? So the first important piece of it is learn your platform. Whatever your platform is, make sure that you've learned it, right? Because if you don't understand your platform, you're not going to be able to be really smooth as you're doing it. So make sure that you're also practicing. You might want to get on, do a happy hour with the other people in your group, or have coffee in the morning with the people who are on your team, and then practice, how do you do some of these things? And then be prepared, right? So the video here, you can see I'm closing things. I'm pulling up YouTube. I'm even going to make sure that I've queued up the YouTube clip that I'm going to use, right? So make sure that lots of things are booted up. And then have them separated, right? So I'm pulling up a video of Ricky Gervais, but then I'm pausing it after the commercials are over. So in the background of—
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about the subject.
Oh, yeah, go back. So, so know what you're going to be doing, and then have those materials ready, pictures, things like that, so you're not juggling it in front of people. Because remember, any time for people to disconnect is time that they're going to disconnect. So YouTube, pictures, games, and then really think about getting outside of your desk, right? Make sure that you have the ability to log on through your phone and then go out for walks. Get off the desk. That's going to be an important thing to break it. Otherwise, it just looks like we're staring at the individuals. So we're thinking about, when we're looking at the CTR protocol, what we're thinking about is this idea of we really want to start with activation, and remembering that the importance of activation is one, it's going to increase individuals' energy, access to cognitive resources, and then ultimately it provides a new possibility. So activation can then lead to more action, right? So that's an important thing to recognize, is as we do things together, we might then go do it as we do it together in session on the telehealth. Then we might go do it another time. So the clubs really revolve around activation and testing out some of those beliefs. And then we really want to focus in on activity after that. That leads us to activating and the clubs. The clubs are going to establish the value. And remember, one of the things that we struggle with during the isolation is we can't, if an individual isn't responding to us, we can't go to their house. We can't just stop by and hang out with mom while they're upstairs. We don't have that ability. And so it's a really important thing for us to recognize, since we don't have that ability, really making sure that they want to return to us. So we want to make it fun and interesting. And then we're going to test, are things enjoyable? We're going to test beliefs about asociality. Is time with other people worthwhile? And then, beliefs about their energy and their and whether they have to wait for the energy. As you finish things in the group, you want to develop a plan for more action. So here's an example. These are not patients or these are not individuals that I serve, but this is one when I was working with a group about demonstrating it. So,
and I go, yeah, it's so funny. The best part about it is he always
eyes there, Zach.
He goes,
they do. They have amazing pies. Careful around your eyes there, Zach.
Be careful. He always warns people to be careful around his eyes. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah.
This is Zach
Your
Efron. Right? And then
you being a little kid chasing down home run balls at Giants games. That's exactly right. Do you have a favorite story?
As it gets
that guy, you told me that guy right there. The bomb's got something stuck in its top.
Right, and then so I can just do it. But do you see, like, even you guys are all, I'm like watching. Gavin's laughing.
Dude, I
right?
love it. Yeah, I love it.
It's such a good show.
Yeah.
And this one time, now anybody on the phone? Is there somebody you want to see from Hot Ones?
Dude, it's so good.
It's so good. Like, here's Post Malone.
The
only problem with YouTube.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Right? That's how bad it was.
Toby Keith. You know what? It was right short hair.
So these are the things that you can. Oh, you don't have to do Hot Ones. Your homework assignment is to find the best Hot Ones you can find, and then I want you to text me the Hot Ones, and I'll pull them up before we go.
So right now in the age of this, I have the best that I get, the best that I can get. That's what I've got. So, but it's just sort of an example of, if I was doing this with real individuals, it would be a little bit more spread out. It would be a little bit more drawn out. But this idea of, they're all laughing. We can go, oh, isn't that really funny? Oh my gosh, Gavin really liked that video. And then really this idea of, instead of sending them out to do something else, send them out to go watch more Hot Ones. Because if they're watching more Hot Ones, one, there's a chance that they're going to share that with other people, right? They might show their family. The other thing that they're doing is, if I'm watching Hot Ones and trying to see which one's funny, I have more energy. It is enjoyable. If nobody's watched the show Hot Ones, one, they curse on it. So I just want to give you guys a heads up if people are offended by foul language. Not too much, but it's really spicy, but it's really funny. So they're doing that. They're probably enjoying it a little bit. They're thinking about it, so they're paying more attention. So that means if they're paying attention to Hot Ones, they're not paying attention as much to their voices. They're not paying as much to the worry, right? So there's actually a clinical reason for that, outside of just it's sort of silly and fun. But then we're also, in the video pointing out that everybody, like connecting the individuals on there, right? Oh, Gavin liked that. Oh, you like that too? And so then the next time they have a reason to come back, which is to share their hot ones that we might pull up. That's true of chickens with or chickens with pants on, cats with lightsabers. It could be watching music videos together using YouTube. Any of these things are possible. There was even a question I think that came through we could talk about at the end about things like Snapchat and TikTok. Please check with your agency before getting involved in this stuff. But listen, creating videos together with individuals, if it's getting them connected and getting them doing stuff, there's always a benefit. And these things, there's a reason why most of us lose a lot of productive work time because of these apps. It's because they draw us in. Well, that's going to be great for our individuals who aren't sometimes drawn into things as much. As these clubs form more, and as they start coming back and we're energized, we can very easily dip into, as we're energized, being like, this is awesome. What else would you want to be doing? What else would you want to get? So we can start bringing in aspirations, right? So set up this time and testing out some of these, activating a competing set of beliefs around the idea that I'm capable, I can connect, things like that. So we're going to activate some of those. And as I'm feeling a little bit more capable, then we can start trying to elicit some of those aspirations, right? And again, doing it on, with the group. As we evaluate some of this activity together, we can add more activity. We can do more stuff on it together. We can do more stuff out afterwards. So the example with Hot Ones is we watched it together and then they're going to go watch it on their own. If we go for a walk together, right, we can then go for a walk alone, right? Or go, invite your dad out for a walk. Any of these ways in which we can sort of take the activity that we're doing together and put it out into the world. And then as we're trying to be more active in the world, if I go, I would love to, but, I keep hearing those things tell me that, I'm bad and they're going to murder me. And if I go outside, I'm going to get COVID and then it's going to be my fault for the 240,000 deaths. And then we go, oh man, that sounds really upsetting. Should we come up with like a seminar to figure out how to not be so upset by that stuff? And then we can go out and do more walks. If that stuff didn't upset you, you'd be able to go out for more walks. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, cool. So let's come up with a seminar, because I know, there are a couple of people who've been talking about not wanting to go outside because they hear these things that upset them. And listen, there's some individuals who have actually mastered some of this stuff, so they can actually lead some of the seminars if they want to. As we're doing all of these things, we're going to start testing out some of those beliefs. All right. So after my Hot Ones, activity, I want to see, ask, do you guys think this was more fun doing it together? Like, it would have been fun to watch Hot Ones on my own, but how much fun was it to see, Gavin laughing? Oh, it was really, really fun. And then somebody goes, yeah. And then he suggested Post Malone. Oh yeah. And so then we started seeing, so, that's weird. Maybe time with other people is worth it. Possibly. That's weird. Right. And so really kind of making sure that we're thinking those things through, that we're always coming back to do guided discovery and restructuring some of those beliefs. At the end, we can really use the whiteboard, which many of these programs have built into it, to help draw some of the conclusions. So here's an example where we can draw some of the conclusions at the end using the whiteboard. I am a Zoom boy because Drexel University has a Zoom account. So I don't have any financial stake in Zoom.
Things that we're gonna, the pieces that we want to really focus in on are, just as sort of a reminder, right? So we're talking about that there's a value to group or to club, right? Time with others is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I think worthwhile. And then, I have more energy / feel better after.
So one of the things I realized is I'm a terrible typist. But again, this is an opportunity to use the whiteboard, but this is after we've drawn the conclusion. You can take a screenshot of that. You can copy it and then text it to everybody. In my private practice work, I've been doing a lot of texting. So during the session, while we're wrapping it up, I'm texting it to the individuals I'm serving. So as we move forward, we want to encourage some self-generation. How do they start running some of these clubs on their own? So here's an example of actually everybody in my family. We do story hour with my younger brother's kid, who's going to be the special guest at circle time, because my younger brother has a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so I took it on myself. I got a book called I'm Dirty. And so that's me reading to them. And then at the end of it, I flipped around and we went and play. I didn't play on, but we went and looked at all the trucks. So my 2-year-old nephew and my 4-year-old niece like freaked out when at the end of that book, which is all about tractors, we were looking at real tractors. So it's an opportunity, you know, me as an individual, I can use some of that technology and start doing it on my own, FaceTime, things like that. So I'm no longer the passive recipient. I'm ultimately the creator of some of these things. Thinking about who can they teach, right? So if they take a seminar with you, or a webinar, I guess we're gonna have to call them for this, which may not be such a bad thing even to do as we go forward. You know, young people can chime into webinars. You know, who can they teach? You know, can they join the webinar and be one of the teachers as well? Also looking at, you know, that this isolation might be an opportunity to connect, you know, if they've got nieces and nephews. I've got 3 or 4 individuals I serve, and I'm like, do you have books at home? I said, I bet your brother or sister would love it if you started reading to their kid, because they're probably like up to here with reading books. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And I even demonstrated for one of my individuals how you could do it. So it's really helpful. And then really starting to look for other clubs. We can start it, but really you can get this stuff from the individuals. They know much, much better how to do it. Just remembering that we're all in it together. So really thinking about where are the opportunities for finding new skills, you know, new materials. There's, you know, listen, at the end of the day, there's the DBT skills groups. You know, what DBT provides, especially the DBT skills group provides, is it's a series of really good, solid CBT skills that span like just anything you could imagine that you need in the way of CBT. They do it, and they've identified skills that can be used by individuals who struggle in using their skills at the time that they need them because they're so overwhelmed. That's perfect. And they're just really, really, you know, many of them are simple to use. The other thing is that DBT skills manuals really outline for you how to teach it. And so it really is a nice thing. So you can create a seminar, right? You can create a workshop around one of the DBT skills, right? So one of the individuals I serve loves Dear Man. So doing Dear Man, you could do a 3-part series on Dear Man. There's online apps. There's lots of online apps that can help us learn those things and do it together. Asking colleagues. The important thing is start with the things that you know and you're good at, and then expand outward. You know, if I have a skill and Sonia doesn't have the skill, I should teach Sonia that skill, and Sonia should teach me her skills. And then practice, practice, practice. There's lots of opportunities to practice, but practice them before you get on there. The reason so many individuals hate skills groups is that oftentimes the people are teaching skills and they barely know the skill themselves. So take the time to practice that skill ahead of time. So one of the questions was, how does TikTok and Snapchat work with our individuals? I'm not familiar with these. So I guess the first thing I would say is don't either dive into a technology and figure it out and play with it a little bit, right? Or don't get involved. I wouldn't, or avoid technologies that you're not really knowledgeable about, right? So if TikTok's not your thing, I would check it out. Also, every technology you're going to start using, I highly suggest, I highly, highly tell you talk with your administrator. If you are a sole practitioner, talk with a colleague before you use it. Because there are all these like hidden things, and I know they're being very generous with us about things like confidentiality and stuff during this time. But that being said, just measure twice, cut once. TikTok's pretty cool. I know actually TikTok's not one of the things that I'm particularly knowledgeable about, but I know you create these like little videos, but it could be really fun for things for people to go do. Snapchat, the one thing I thought about Snapchat would be, using the filters on these things and trying to do it together. But there's upsides and downsides to Snapchat. Any advice for clinicians to overcome their own anxieties about phone calls and telehealth? Really good question, Alexa. Practice, 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 right? We know that anxiety comes and anxiety goes. So if you sit with it, and then the more you do it, right? So if we think about anxiety, there's sort of three types of anxiety. There is physiological anxiety. So it's like actually how if I like put things on your head to see about your anxiety, that goes down first. If you sort of habituate and get used to it. The next anxiety is your reported anxiety. So like if I said on a scale 0 to 10, how high is your anxiety? That one goes down next. So it goes, and then there's anticipatory anxiety, and anticipatory anxiety goes down last. And so the way that you do it is you do it a lot, and so all this stuff is sort of, all of this stuff is really, can be anxiety provoking. And so get used to it. That's why I really do think, I know a lot of people have done this, but I saw my wife do this. Everybody, and there are people who work with my wife. She works in early childhood education, training people, and some of the people who she works with are not great with technology and are some of them are older and have never really used this technology a lot. So what they've done is they've had like a series of happy hours. But while they've been doing these happy hours, they it's like happy hours, like, whatever. But they like walk around and they show people pictures and they show people the stuff they're working on. So while we're having this fun, chill time, you're playing with it. The only way you're going to get comfortable with this technology is using it. And so I'm pretty comfortable because I've been doing Zoom now for over a year. So I'm used to this platform. But one of the things I need to do is I want to start putting polls in these things. I want this to be much more interactive. And if I have to, depending on how long this thing goes for, some of my actual workshops are going to have to be done through this. Could you imagine, like, I appreciate you guys showing up for like an hour twice a week. You guys are the best. Makes me feel good. Could you imagine like 6 hours of me just talking at you? I'll lose my mind. So there's going to have to be polls and breakout rooms and all this stuff. The only way I'm going to get comfortable with that is practicing. The things about Zoom clubs, one, I think also make sure that people, I would do this individually, is like, let them know, about, sort of like I said with the video, like be careful about videos, right? And then listen, just pull up the funny things from like Facebook and Instagram of, the person, going to the bathroom in the middle of a business meeting, and those types of things. That way they kind of know what's going on. Newman, that's actually a really good point. Especially, well, actually, whoever you're working with, you actually can like learn a lot from the individuals, and that's what we want. I once worked with somebody and she was from Australia, and she's like, well, I can't talk to him, how can I talk to this guy about baseball? I don't know anything about it. I'm like, you're lucky. When I talk to people about cooking, I need to like make sure I keep check on like what I'm talking about, because it doesn't need to be Aaron's cooking show for, all of a sudden. So they can sort of walk you through, and drag your heels a little bit and let them teach you a little bit more. How great would this young person feel, and how capable that they're able to teach you how to use TikTok. Any other practical considerations, i.e. max number of participants, maybe due to too many people? You know what, honestly, I think that's going to be a play it by ear type thing. I think if we get to a point where we have too many participants logging in, things are going really well. So that seems like a blessing, not a curse. If we had like too many people who were logged in. And if there are, then just split it up into 2 different meetings, Thank you so much, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. Hope you guys do something really, really fun. I miss you too, Michelle. Be well, be safe, be good to yourselves. It's a really kind of crazy time out there, so be gentle with yourselves during it. But make sure you wash your hands, and I will see you guys Monday for engaging new people through telehealth. So see ya.